This is a Fox News Alert. I'm Bret Baier at the White House. We'll have the latest on the increasing prospects of a summit between the U.S. and North Korea in just a moment. First, a pair of breaking stories right now. Two prominent people publicly on the conservative side of the political spectrum, you may say, are out of jobs tonight. Comedian Roseanne Barr, who plays a character with pro-Trump sympathies, has lost her highly rated TV show following a tweet that many people considered racist and almost all, including ABC, considered over the line. And Missouri Republican Governor Eric Greitens, once considered a rising star in the GOP, has just resigned this afternoon amid an impeachment effort sparked by a pair of scandals we've been covering here on Special Report for weeks. First, to our Midwest newsroom and correspondent Matt Finn with the breaking story on Governor Greitens. Good evening, Matt.
Bret, good evening. Governor Greitens was mired in mounting legal trouble and scandal, and it was clearly taking a toll on his ability to lead. Until he resigned a short while ago, there was an active special session in the Missouri House to consider whether Greitens was going to be the first governor in Missouri's history to face impeachment proceedings. And Greitens was also facing a second felony trial related to misusing a donor list. Now, a short while ago, the governor formally announced his resignation. However, even on his way out, the Republican governor insisted he is innocent and chose careful words to strike back at those he believed wanted to take him down.
This ordeal has been designed to cause an incredible amount of strain on my family. Millions of dollars of mounting legal bills, endless personal attacks designed to cause maximum damage to family and friends. And it's clear that for the forces that oppose us, there is no end in sight. I cannot allow those forces to continue to cause pain and difficulty to the people that I love.
Today's announcement comes exactly 2 weeks after Governor Greitens was found not guilty on his first felony charge related to a picture he allegedly took and transmitted of his mistress. That photo never materialized, and the state dropped the case against the governor. But Greitens was also charged with felony tampering of a computer related to misusing a donor list for political purposes. Today, a judge ruled his team would have to turn over paperwork related to that second charge. This very long saga of scandals involving the governor, who was just inaugurated last year, finally comes to a close this evening. Bret.
Matt Finn, live in Chicago. Matt, thank you very much. To our other top story tonight, ABC has canceled Roseanne Barr's TV show. This afternoon's announcement comes following a tweet from the comic, which most people found not funny at all, but rather abhorrent. Here's Fox News media analyst and host of Fox's Media Buzz, Howard Kurtz.
Roseanne Barr had been on top of the world. Her resurrected show, featuring her as a pro-Trump housewife, a huge hit for ABC.
How could you have voted for him, Roseanne?
He talked about jobs, Jackie. He said he'd shake things up.
Look at Roseanne. I called her yesterday. Look at her ratings.
But hours ago, in the blink of a tweet, ABC canceled Roseanne over the star's ugly comments about former Obama White House official Valerie Jarrett. Comments the network called abhorrent, repugnant, and inconsistent with our values. The offending tweet, using Jarrett's initials, said if Muslim Brotherhood and Planet of the Apes had a baby equals VJ. Jarrett is black, so the ape reference caused a social media uproar. But at first, Barr did not back off. When Twitter users called the line racist, Barr responded that Muslims are not a race. She later tweeted that she'd been making a joke, before finally saying this: I apologize to Valerie Jarrett and to all Americans. I am truly sorry for making a bad joke about her politics and her looks. But the outrage mounted. Actress Wanda Sykes, who worked with the program, said she would not be returning next season. Barr's talent agency, ICM, dropped her. Al Sharpton said that comparing Jarrett to an ape is racist and inexcusable. ABC must take action now. Many other comedians have survived offensive jokes. Stephen Colbert made a sexual crack about President Trump and Vladimir Putin. Kathy Griffin is mounting a comeback after posing with a bloody Trump mask. Wanda Sykes herself once called Rush Limbaugh the 20th hijacker who failed to show up on 9/11 because of a drug addiction. A key difference? Barr's mockery of Jarrett touched the third rail of race. The furor prompted Bob Iger, the CEO of parent company Disney, to say there was only one thing to do here, and that was the right thing. ABC acted with stunning swiftness to protect its brand, although the show had been very lucrative. In this hyper-polarized Twitter era, a network's reputation can be tarnished as quickly as a top star can self-destruct. Bret?
Howie, thanks. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders aboard Air Force One refused to comment on the Roseanne cancellation, asked multiple times about it. She replied to these numerous questions by saying the president is focused on other things. So what do you think? What's your reaction to the Roseanne cancellation? Let me know on Twitter at Bret Baier. You can use the hashtag special report, or on Facebook at facebook.com/Bret Baier SR. More with the panel later. Back here at the White House, the likelihood of a summit between President Trump and Kim Jong-un seems to be growing by the day. A top North Korean official has been dispatched to New York. He will meet with America's top diplomat Wednesday. All of this comes less than a week after President Trump canceled the planned Singapore summit. Chief White House correspondent John Roberts is here on the North Lawn with me tonight. Good evening, John.
Brett, good evening to you. The White House isn't yet ready to declare the summit back on, and even if it is back on, it may be impossible to hold it on June the 12th. May have to be slid back a couple of days, but the planning is proceeding full steam ahead.
President Trump today maintained his upbeat assessment of a summit with Kim Jong-un, tweeting this morning that one of the highest-ranking officials in North Korea was headed to the U.S. Kim Jong-chol, the vice chairman of North Korea, heading now to New York, the president tweeted. Solid response to my letter. Thank you. Kim Jong-chol was the head of North Korea's cyber spying agency and was sanctioned by the Obama administration in 2015 for allegedly orchestrating the hack attack on Sony Pictures. He was also at Kim Jong-un's side during the meeting with South Korean President Moon Jae-in. The turnaround with North Korea happened after President Trump shocked the world, sending Kim a letter last Thursday calling off the summit.
This president, in that letter last week, I thought really got some kinetic energy going. Folks all of a sudden said, wow, this may actually not happen, and if we want it to happen, then we're going to start moving. And ever since then, practically, North Korea, South Korea, and the United States have been making very positive moves.
The administration has two teams in the region. One, led by Deputy Chief of Staff Joe Hagan, is in Singapore to work out the logistics of a possible summit. Another team is at the DMZ, nailing down some of the diplomatic issues. And Secretary of State Mike Pompeo will meet in New York tomorrow with Kim Jong-chol.
We are still finalizing exactly what these meetings will look like, but the Secretary will be heading up to New York tomorrow, and I believe returning sometime on Thursday. I think it's pretty impressive thinking about where we were 1 year ago, where we were even 6 months ago, for that matter, and now we have 3 simultaneous meetings taking place on this matter to talk about the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula.
And President Trump will have one last meeting with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe ahead of June 12th. Abe will visit the White House next Thursday to talk strategy. Japan wants to make sure its interests are represented. The threat from North Korea's intermediate-range ballistic missiles and Japanese citizens kidnapped by North Korea. At their Mar-a-Lago summit in April, President Trump promised he would raise it.
We're going to do everything possible to have them brought back and bring them back to Japan. I gave you that promise.
President Trump has sought Chinese President Xi Jinping's help in bringing North Korea to the table. But today, a possible complicating factor. The White House announcing it will soon impose a 25% tariff on $50 billion in Chinese imports and implement investment restrictions and enhanced export controls on U.S. technology. China responded tersely to what it saw as a negotiating tactic in broader trade talks. In a statement, the Ministry of Commerce saying, "We are surprised by the strategic statement released by the White House, but at the same time, it is somewhat expected." And President Trump got some blowback over a tweet he sent out on Memorial Day when he posted, "Happy Memorial Day. Those who died for our great country would be very happy and proud at how well our country is doing today. Best economy in decades, lowest unemployment numbers for blacks and Hispanics ever, and women in 18 years, rebuilding our military, and so much more. Nice." That prompted a sober response from the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Martin Dempsey, tweeting, "This day, of all days of the year, should not be about any one of us. No matter how prestigious or powerful, no matter how successful we perceive ourselves to be."
The president's tone was far different when he gave the yearly address at the Arlington National Cemetery, honoring those who gave their lives in defense of this country. The first daughter, Ivanka Trump, seemed to get it just about pitch perfect when she tweeted out, quote, "As we remember our fallen servicemen and women, our hearts are filled with gratitude for their sacrifice and awe of their courage." Bret?
Another aspect of Ivanka Trump raising some eyebrows about the business side.
Some people are casting a skeptical eye at the fact that she recently received from China 7 new trademarks, and then shortly after that, the president cut a deal with Xi Jinping to resurrect the Chinese telecom giant ZTE. Abigail Clem, who runs the Ivanka Trump brand for the first daughter, said that it's business as usual. They were simply trying to protect the trademarks in an era when there are so many trademark violations. The White House pointing out that while the president did cut a deal with Xi Jinping to save ZTE, he also this morning said that he was set to impose a 25% tariff on $50 billion worth of Chinese goods.
A lot of moving parts. John, as always, thank you. Well, the administration is also dealing with a public relations mess tonight involving immigrant children. Officials insist reports that nearly 1,500 kids are lost are just not true. Chief National Correspondent Ed Henry looks at the facts tonight.
When Ivanka Trump posted this photo with her young son this weekend, the Trump haters got triggered, unleashing online attacks charging she does not care about migrant kids and demanding to know where are the children. A reference to allegations that over 1,400 migrant children have gone missing, and blamed President Trump for ordering they be separated from their illegal immigrant parents. Even the White House spokesman Hogan Gidley and officials at the Department of Health and Human Services fired back today. None of those charges are true.
That is an inaccurate characterization of what happened.
This month, Attorney General Jeff Sessions traveled to Texas to announce a new policy. The government will try to prosecute everyone who crosses the southwest border illegally, even those seeking asylum. That will lead to some parents being separated from their children, which is already part of existing law.
If you are smuggling a child, then we will prosecute you. And that child may be separated from you as required by law.
The 1,475 kids who allegedly went missing arrived at the border from October to December 2017, months before the Sessions policy went into effect. Secondly, HHS officials point out those kids were part of a total of 7,635 children they surveyed over those 3 months who showed up at the border without parents, so they were not separated from them. Trump administration officials took the extra step of placing the over 7,000 kids with adult sponsors in the U.S. HHS found 6,075 of the kids still living with sponsors, 52 living with someone else, 28 had run away, 5 were deported, leaving 1,475 unaccounted for. HHS officials say some of their sponsors are here illegally and likely dodging the government's attempts to contact them. Eric Hargan, the HHS official in charge of the program, stating, quote, "The assertion that unaccompanied alien children are lost is completely false. This is a classic example of the adage, no good deed goes unpunished." That did not stop former Obama officials like Jon Favreau and journalists like Hadass Gold of CNN from compounding the mischaracterizations, tweeting this photo from azcentral.com, a website affiliated with USA Today, of Latino children being held in cages to claim it shows President Trump's policies are mean. The problem, that image was taken in 2014 when Barack Obama was president.
Republican Marco Rubio is a frequent critic of the president, but he gave him some political cover on this one. Pressed on whether the law dealing with separating parents from kids should be fixed, Rubio told CBS the better law to change is actually securing the border. Bret?
Ed, thank you. Up next, the president goes after the special counsel for what he might do. We'll explain. First, here's what some of our Fox affiliates around the country are covering tonight. Fox 26 in Houston as classes resume at a suburban high school where a mass shooting left 8 students and 2 substitute teachers dead. The school district says Santa Fe High School will have additional law enforcement officers to provide security for students as they wrap up the school year this week. Fox 13 in Memphis says the University of Memphis says it will become the first college in the nation to accept a scholarship for family of active duty service members killed or severely injured as full payment. The school president says starting this fall, any student who meets the criteria for the Folds of Honor scholarship will not owe any money to the university. And this is a live look at Salt Lake City from Fox 13. The big story there tonight, a Utah man and his wife are now back home after spending nearly 2 years imprisoned in a Venezuelan jail. Josh Holt spoke briefly at the airport Monday to thank everyone who helped him and his wife. The Venezuelan government accused them of having assault weapons. The Holts and American officials insisted that was never true. That's tonight's live look outside the Beltway. Eurozone's third largest economy is headed toward another financial crisis. The new prime minister designate in Italy is trying to form a coalition government there. If he does not succeed, it could mean new elections in the fall, after campaigns featuring intense anti-establishment and anti-European Union themes. Well, the effects on Wall Street here in the U.S. pretty big. The Dow lost 392, the S&P 500 dropped 32, the Nasdaq fell 37. A man with a knife stabbed 2 police officers Tuesday in Belgium. He then stole their guns and fatally shot them and a bystander. That attacker was later killed by police. Prosecutors say the incident is likely terror-related. One local newspaper reports the attacker yelled "Allahu Akbar." The attacker was an inmate who had been granted a few hours release Monday, but failed to return to prison. A British court, meantime, has sentenced a prominent far-right activist to 13 months in jail after live streaming outside a criminal trial in violation of reporting restrictions. The judge told the man, who goes by the pseudonym Tommy Robinson, his actions could be highly prejudicial to defendants in the trial. News of his arrest sparked calls on social media for his immediate release and a demonstration Saturday outside the British Prime Minister's Downing Street office. It has been a busy few days for President Trump on Twitter. He's once again slamming the special counsel investigation into alleged Russian collusion and his presidential campaign and urging scrutiny of the Hillary Clinton campaign and effort. The president is also linking the probe to the coming midterms. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge shows us how.
On Twitter, the president ramped up the pressure, labeling members of the special counsel team, quote, 13 angry Democrats, who, along with Obama administration loyalists, quote, will be meddling with the midterm elections because the president said Republicans are taking the lead. As President Trump went further, questioning why they aren't investigating Hillary Clinton, the Republican-led House Oversight and Judiciary Committees are preparing for a new round of key FBI interviews in early June. Witnesses include FBI espionage chief Bill Priestap, who oversaw the Clinton email and Russia counterintelligence case. While the Russia probe officially opened in late July 2016, Comey testified Priestap told him not to inform Congress for months.
It's usually the decision of the head of our counterintelligence division.
And just, again, to get the detailed on the record, why was the decision made not to brief senior congressional leadership?
Because of the sensitivity of the matter.
These text messages between FBI agent Peter Strzok, Priestap's number 2, and FBI lawyer Lisa Page are drawing fresh scrutiny because they indicate Priestap went to London 2 months before the FBI officially opened the Russia case. A congressional source questioned whether the trip was connected. One committee Republican said Priestap, quote, needs to be questioned about his actions regarding the so-called Russia collusion case, including his trip to London in May 2016 and his relationship with the FBI informant. The chairman of the Freedom Caucus wants more on the timing and whether the informant and the Bureau were working together for weeks before July 2016.
When did it start? We do know that actually those confidential human sources were engaging prior to the official FBI investigation. So the question begs, at whose direction? What were they collecting and who were they reporting to?
Some Republicans and Democrats dismissed the allegations.
When they began getting evidence that the Russians were engaged in a broad campaign to try and influence the 2016 election, I think it was appropriate for them to use a confidential informant to investigate what the Russians were up to.
And within the last hour, the Senate Judiciary Committee sent out a notice confirming the Justice Department Inspector General is scheduled to testify a week from today about events leading up to the 2016 election, including the Clinton email case. A source close to the discussion said it's a placeholder and warned the timing could still slip to the following week. Brett.
Catherine, thank you.
You're welcome.
Starbucks stores around the country are right now wrapping up a 4-hour diversity training session. It was an effort to clean up the chain's tarnished image over its treatment of 2 African Americans at a Philadelphia store last month. Correspondent Brian Yennis is in Philly tonight.
More than 8,000 Starbucks stores nationwide closed their doors this afternoon so their employees can undergo racial bias training, and this Starbucks in Philadelphia is the reason why. On April 12th, the store manager called the police on 2 black men, Rashawn Nelson and Dante Robinson, for simply sitting in the cafe without purchasing something. Police arrested the men. The video went viral.
Don't arrest me! Arrest the police!
Protesters mobilized, police and Starbucks apologized.
What happened and the way that incident escalated and the outcome was nothing but reprehensible. And I'm sorry.
For 4 hours today, 175,000 employees watched anti-bias training videos.
That racial and systemic bias have many causes.
Employees had group discussions on racial bias, even reflected on the history of racial discrimination in public places. Civil rights organizations like the NAACP participated. In Philadelphia, customers acknowledged the need for the training.
I was very, very disgusted. I was extremely disturbed by what happened.
This is something that we have to deal with in our society, and so I'm glad that Starbucks is doing it.
Aware of their own issues, Starbucks Executive Chairman Howard Schultz also partly blamed President Trump for exacerbating racism in America.
I would say on a personal level, it probably has given license to people to feel as if they can emulate and copy the kind of behavior and language that comes out of this administration.
By one estimate, Starbucks lost some $12 million today. Schultz told shareholders it's not a loss at all, rather an investment for the future. Bret?
Brian, thank you. Schultz could be one of the candidates for president. We'll see. Police in Maryland say they have found the body of a man who disappeared trying to help a woman rescue her cat during flash flooding Sunday in Ellicott City. 39-year-old Edison Hermond was a sergeant in the Maryland Army National Guard and a U.S. Air Force veteran. Sunday's torrential rains led to the second major flooding event in less than 2 years in that historic city. Up next, how one southern state could decide which party controls the Senate in the next Congress. First, beyond our borders tonight, the U.S. envoy to the United Nations hosted conference on disarmament says Syria's presidency of the Geneva-based body is a travesty. Syria took up the rotating presidency Monday. It will chair the body for a 4-week period. American envoy Robert Wood walked out when his Syrian counterpart began his opening remarks. An unusual tolerance of dissent tonight in Iran. University students there were harshly critical of the country's direction during a meeting with Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Media reports say the session reflected concerns many feel over the U.S. pullout from the nuclear deal and Iran's battered economy. Many Brazilian truckers frustrated by rising fuel prices are striking for a 9th day. There are sporadic deliveries of gasoline and goods there, easing a shutdown that has led to widespread shortages and disturbances. Some truckers have stopped striking after the government announced measures to cut diesel prices for 60 days. The military has also stepped in to secure many deliveries, and police operations helped break up many of the blockades in Brazil. Just some of the other stories beyond our borders tonight. We'll be right back. President leaving earlier. He will host a campaign-style rally in about an hour and a half in Nashville. Tennessee's U.S. Senate race figures to be crucial in both parties' efforts to try to control the U.S. Senate after this year. Correspondent Steve Harrigan is in Nashville tonight.
The most expensive race in Tennessee history could determine control of the U.S. Senate.
It's going to be highly competitive. There's going to be a huge amount of money from the outside poured into this race, especially if it looks like it might be the pivot that turns on whether the Democrats control the Senate.
The Republican Representative Marsha Blackburn, a self-described hardcore conservative who carries a pistol in her purse, proclaims her support for President Trump often.
I stand when the president walks in the room, and yes, I stand when I hear the Star-Spangled Banner.
The Democrat, former Governor Phil Bredesen, calls himself a problem solver and rarely mentions the president at all.
The less he has to take on the president or kind of take on national politics, that's probably all the better for him. The more he can keep it local on statewide issues, I think that portends better for him come November.
It is a balancing act for a Democrat in a state Trump won by more than 20 points.
Even though a lot of people think he's a little rough around the edges, I think he's doing okay.
Despite Trump's popularity, Blackburn knows she's in for a fight.
I think it is close because my opponent did serve as governor for 2 terms, and he has run statewide 3 times. This would be his 4th statewide race, and people are familiar with his name.
In what is likely to be a tight race, Bret is expected to do well in the cities, Blackburn in the suburbs, while both battle for the rural vote.
They've been promising this and that ever since he's been in office and haven't done nothing. We need people that's going to be in there to do something to help back his agenda to get America back on the road again.
President Trump won some counties in Tennessee with almost 90% of the vote. The question now for this Senate race is whether that popularity is transferable. Bret?
Steve Harrigan live in Nashville. Steve, thanks. We'll see that rally here on Fox News Channel in just a bit. The U.S. Supreme Court is allowing Arkansas to put in effect restrictions on how abortion pills are administered. Critics of a challenged state law say it could effectively end medication abortions in the state. The justices did not comment in rejecting an appeal from the Planned Parenthood affiliate in Arkansas. The law says doctors who provide abortion pills must hold a contract with another physician who has admitting privileges at a hospital and who would agree to handle all complications. Meantime, more evacuations tonight in Hawaii as fast-moving lava from the Kilauea volcano makes its way deeper into a major subdivision there. Correspondent Jeff Paul is once again on the Big Island tonight.
Annihilating everything in its path, fast-moving lava continues to burn its way through this rural residential neighborhood. And it shows no signs of stopping as it flows closer and closer to more homes.
What I saw was an absolute ocean of lava. Instead of rivers and lakes, this was an ocean with waves in it, and wave after wave came in.
Fire and police are going door to door, urging folks to leave after at least 10 more homes were destroyed.
Disturbingly, some people just refuse to leave. And so, it kind of gives us terrifying insight into what's going on out there.
The Hawaii National Guard says this is a site they're seeing more and more lava covering roads, creating one less escape route for those who might become stranded. That fountain of lava you see behind me, geologists estimate it is shooting 180 feet into the air.
I look outside and I see a river of lava going down the street about 10 miles an hour. I opened the door and it came inside the house.
At the volcano summit, more earthquakes and explosions sent ash 2 to 3 miles into the sky. Below the peak, with lava closing in quicker and spreading farther, emergency responders are now forced to take even greater risk to save those who won't leave.
It's just nothing to fool with, and you really want to get out of the way of it, because there's no negotiating with a force like this. It's going to do what it's going to do.
Lava now covers at least 2,400 acres of land here in the lower rift zone. That level of destruction only expected to expand, with as many as 8 fissures remaining very active and unpredictable. Bret?
Jeff Paul on the Big Island tonight. Jeff, thanks. The Trump administration explains what happened to about 1,500 immigrant children some say are lost, plus the status of immigration on Capitol Hill. We'll get reaction from the panel.
If you are smuggling a child, then we will prosecute you. And that child may be separated from you as required by law. We don't want to separate families, but we don't want families to come to the border illegally.
Every law enforcement agency in this country separates parents from children when they're arrested for a crime. There is no new policy. This has always been the policy.
There is real bipartisan support for changing that.
I would be open to changing that law, but the better law to change is to secure our border.
Well, immigration, specifically about immigrant children. 1,500 of them, the headline said, had been lost under the Trump administration's adherence to this policy. HHS putting out a statement refuting that, saying the assertion that unaccompanied alien children, UACs, are lost is completely false. These children are not lost. Their sponsors, or usually parents or family members, in all cases have been vetted for criminality, and the ability to provide for them simply did not respond or could not be reached reached when this voluntary call was made. While there are many possible reasons for this, in many cases sponsors cannot be reached because they themselves are illegal aliens and do not want to be reached by federal authorities. So what about this issue specifically and where immigration stands currently? Let's bring in our panel. Join me here from the White House, Mara Liasson, national political correspondent of National Public Radio, and at the Bureau, Steve Hayes, editor-in-chief for the Weekly Standard, and Matt Schlapp, contributor with The Hill. Mara, this got a lot of attention.
Got a lot of attention, and it has a lot of parts to it. First of all, the idea these kids were lost is not true. On the other hand, the idea of separating kids and families, which was a policy by previous administrations, and as you just heard, the Trump administration made very clear it wanted to continue it because it was a deterrent. Don't bring your kids here illegally because you're going to get separated from them. All of a sudden, it seems like the White House felt that they didn't want to be associated with this, so they decided to blame it on Democrats, even though it's a policy that they were carrying through.
Well, Steve, the characterization of it really did depend on what you were watching or reading as far as these 1,500 kids, or that the policy actually went back a couple of administrations.
That's true, but look, this really took off over the weekend when you had former Obama speechwriter John Favreau and others tweeting, putting this out there, putting out pictures of migrant children in cages and hyping this and saying it was outrageous because it was the Trump administration doing this, failing to note, of course, that this had happened, as you say, under previous administrations. So that is something that I think sort of poured fuel on this proverbial fire, if you will. But there's no question that the Trump administration is trying to take a tough stand on illegal border crossings, which are up after initially going down at the beginning of the Trump administration, by saying this, by making this part of their policy. We saw, I think, at the beginning of the administration what the power of presidential rhetoric, what the power of administration rhetoric did to decrease the numbers of people trying to come across the border. And I think that that's their goal here. I mean, we could debate whether this is the right policy or not, but they've said, both John Kelly as chief of staff and, as you just played, Jeff Sessions as attorney general, has made clear that they view this as an effective deterrent.
Matt, I always say the disclaimer, or I try to, your wife works for this administration. And what do you think the thought process is that behind this move? Are they pushing back against bad news stories on this, or is there a strategy here that's developing on the immigration front?
Bret, be careful. It's very hard to get into the mind of your spouse. But I would just simply say that we got to focus on the law. And the only thing that the Trump administration is doing differently than the Obama administration when it comes to these people with unaccompanied minors is they are following the law. It is a criminal violation for an adult to cross our border illegally. The question is, what do you do with the kids? Here's the real kicker. The kids, the 7,600 kids or some of that we're talking about, this population, almost all of them will stay in America for as long as they want. Let's have that set in this. We only sent home something like 5 kids last year. If an unaccompanied minor gets to our border and is taken into this process, they stay in America. And most of them who are given a place to stay temporarily while supposedly they're going to have a hearing in the first 30 days are given to relatives who are themselves here illegally. So when Democrats say that the Trump administration lost 1,500 kids, Mara's right, that's not accurate. We've actually lost 20 million people. And those 20 million people are bringing in more relatives to the border. This is why, no matter whether you build a wall or not, we have a problem every day at the border that there's all these loopholes that allow you to jump in line, hopscotch in line, to be able to be in America for as long as you want to be.
Mara, I mean, the key point here is that the reason the lost story is not accurate is because they were calling these sponsors, and frankly, they just didn't answer.
They just didn't answer.
They don't know if their kids aren't there, if they're someplace else.
That's right. That doesn't count as lost, meaning they don't know where they are. They didn't return a phone call. To me, the interesting thing is the Trump administration wanted to publicize this. You had John Kelly, Jeff Sessions saying, we're going to separate these kids, as the law says we should, so don't bring them. All of a sudden, it sounds like they feel that they want to blame that separation on Democrats.
But do you think that this, as a political issue, is one that is powerful for Democrats as they head to the midterm?
Sure. They want to say the Trump administration is heartless and they're separating kids, even though Obama did the same thing. But what's so interesting to me is Donald Trump does have a soft spot in the immigration debate. DACA kids, he's often said that he loves them. them. He wants to treat them with great heart. He clearly doesn't want to be on the wrong side of this story and seem like he's the guy separating kids.
And Steve, last word, the thought about immigration as a legislative issue as we head towards the midterms now.
Well, that's easy, Bret. I can easily predict what's going to happen with that. No, look, nobody knows. Nobody knows. I mean, in the short term, this is a Republican challenge because Republicans have control of the House, and there's not consensus on how they should proceed in the House. You have more restrictionist efforts like the Goodlatte legislation that conservatives have been pushing for a long time. You also have moves by the moderates in recent days to try to get their legislation surfaced, and there's disagreement among Republicans. Longer term, the question is whether I think Democrats will agree to fund something like a border wall that Donald Trump is saying that he wants.
All right, panel, stand by. Next up, ABC dumps Roseanne. The politics of that, plus the politics of the Tennessee Senate race, a rally upcoming. Keep it here.
Roseanne, I called her yesterday. Look at her ratings. Look at her ratings. I got a call from Mark Burnett. He did The Apprentice. He's a great guy. He said, Donald, I called just to say hello and to tell you. Did you see Roseanne's ratings? I said, Mark, how big were they? They were unbelievable. Over 18 million people. And it was about us.
Donald Trump at a previous rally is getting ready for another rally in Tennessee. We'll see if he talks about Roseanne. The show is no longer after a tweet that she had overnight in which she compared Valerie Jarrett, former advisor to President Obama, to Planet of the Apes and the Muslim Brotherhood.